When it was initially revealed in 2016 alongside Sonic Mania, my immediate reaction to his then known as Project Sonic 2017 was excitement, if a bit of confusion. For as much as Takashi Iizuka tried to swear that it was a unique, new experience and not a sequel to anything, for the longest time all we had was a CG trailer that was highly reminiscent of Sonic Generations. The more of it was revealed, the more skeptical I became. Everything seemed like an almost deliberate step back from previous titles, specifically Sonic Unleashed and Generations. Despite priding itself on being developed by the same team that brought us Sonic Colors and Generations, this would be incredibly contradictory to both what we know now and we would learn as the game came out. For those of you who are unaware, Sonic Team as we know it is divided into two halves. For the sake of brevity, we'll refer to them as Team A and Team B. Team A has made Sonic Unleashed and Generations, whereas Team B has worked on Sonic Colors, Sonic Lost World, and now Sonic Forces. The story begins with Shadow on a mission, infiltrating Eggman's base for information on something that's never really elaborated on, and encounters a mysterious figure that leaps at Shadow only to be quickly dispatched. After screaming about how he's not weak, flash forward a few months and Shadow is on a mission on a search for E123 Omega. Encountering the same figure, now donning a mask, the Phantom Ruby from Sonic Mania, and the new name of Infinite, he swears his ultimate power and how now, not even Sonic will be able to stop him. A month later, things are looking a bit screwy as Green Hill Zone's once vast oceans and lush fields are now replaced with miles and miles of sand and dying grass. Via walkie-talkie, Tails informs Sonic that Eggman's forces have stormed the city and are running amok. Rushing to the rescue, Sonic destroys some of Eggman's robots. Before Sonic can take on Eggman directly, he's intercepted by Shadow, Zavok, Metal Sonic, and Chaos, followed by the new kid in town, Infinite. Sonic is promptly knocked out and is taken captive. Flash forward another few months, and the newly formed Resistance presumes Sonic to be dead just as he breaks out of prison. As they learn that he's in fact alive, they send a new character that you create to go rescue him. After the rescue, it's up to you, Sonic, and Classic Sonic, who is now from another dimension, to stop Eggman and Infinite's plans for world domination and save the day. You'll notice how much of the story is delivered via black screens of text and little walkie-talkie conversations on the world map. That's one of the larger problems with the story. It does more telling than it does showing. It has a lot of pacing issues that make it feel really inconsistent. One cutscene, everyone thinks Sonic is dead, and in the very next cutscene, they learn that he isn't. Time skips in stories are not a new thing, but the placement of them here makes the entire thing feel completely worthless. You'll also notice how passively I mentioned Classic Sonic, and that's because he has very little, if any, importance in the overall plot. He shows up out of nowhere, dispatches Chaos Zero, and from there he just kinda doesn't really do anything. It's mentioned how he's now from another dimension, and that doesn't make a lot of sense either. And Sonic makes a lame joke about how it's been generations since he's seen him, and aside from that, he really doesn't do anything much at all. If you wrote him out of the plot, very little would change, and it may actually be better, if anything. Messy, poorly written plots aren't really a new thing for Sonic, and for better or worse, Sonic Forces isn't really an exception. But plenty of beloved Sonic games have crummy plots, right? So, maybe the gameplay makes up for it. It really doesn't. Sonic Forces largely walks in the footsteps of the games to come before it, for better and for worse. Modern Sonic controllers is a sort of hybrid between Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, and that's not really a good thing. The problems lay largely in the momentum and the weight of all the characters. Everyone feels remarkably heavy and stiff, and it's especially noticeable with the two Sonics. What should be simple jumps are now leaps of faith. The custom character in particular feels incredibly clunky. Movements are heavy and wisp-ons range from sending you flying forward to being borderline useless. Somewhere in the middle is the burst wisp-on. Easily the most overpowered weapon in the game with how easily you can mow down everything in your path with it, and how quickly it shaves off the health from bosses. The catch to this is that this is the default wisp-on you get at the start of the game, so you really have no reason to ever use anything else. Sure, Red Star Rings return from previous titles, but those don't really contribute to anything either. Super Sonic returns in the form of free DLC, and there's no secret unlockable levels either. Rings don't really serve much of a purpose either. Sonic Forces does away with the live system that was standard in just about every prior release, and depending on if you pick a normal or hard mode, you will always either cap at 100 rings, or be able to collect as many as 999 rings. This is where it gets a little backwards. If you take a hit in normal mode, you lose 20 rings at a time, and in hard mode, you lose all your rings. This never made sense to me. With a lack of a shot mechanic and how levels are scattered to tempt and challenge you to take certain paths, but wouldn't it make more sense to let the player collect more rings in the normal mode? Normal mode describes itself as for those who have never played a Sonic game before, whereas hard mode describes itself as for those who have played a Sonic game before. Wouldn't it make more sense for the lesser experienced players to have an easier experience? One could argue that the hard mode creates a high-risk, high-reward scenario, but the question is, what is the reward? S-ranks are handed out like candy, and as mentioned earlier, rings don't really contribute to anything beyond their rank. Unlockable items are completely randomized. Having all equipable items be unlockable feels completely counterintuitive for a custom character. Sonic Forces essentially plays itself in all the worst ways. Gone are features like short hopping and drifting. Now corners are scripted along with essentially all corridors, and that's essentially the best way to put it. Sonic Forces is mostly scripted. What few places you have full control in are as short as they are easy, and the stages aren't much better either. Levels average about 2 to 2.5 minutes long. Levels constantly feel like they're building up to something that simply never comes. Just as things start to get interesting, the stage abruptly ends. Bosses aren't very challenging either. The fight with Metal Sonic is blatantly copy and pasted into the final battle with Infinite, and the first phase of the Death Egg robot is just the second phase of the Egg Dragoon, but with easily avoidable, disappearing ground. All the challenge on the game comes from the frustrating, poorly controlling mechanics such as the slide and the jungle levels. Hopefully the mining community can give us more in the way of levels than Sonic Team did with all 4 locales in Sonic Forces. It feels so bland and afraid to stick with any of its ideas, some of which are legitimately interesting, could actually be fun if they were more fully realized. But as it stands, Sonic Forces is not a game worth buying. If you must play it, give it a rental or wait for a large price drop.